I'm in my zone.
Hey, this is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and I'm bringing you guys a review for Mugen Souls on the PlayStation 3. And I have to confess, I love strategy RPGs, and the last few NIS titles that I've covered on my channel, I spent a vast amount of time playing, even after I was done with the review and no longer covering the game. Legacysta was an incredible game out of the PlayStation Store, and Disgaea 3 on the Vita was the only title I played on the handheld for a solid 3 or 4 months straight. So naturally, a game like this was right up my alley, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on a copy. However, the one thing I'm not a big fan of is anime, a giggly girl type RPG party, and a poorly translated story on a JRPG. Luckily, this title has enough going on underneath the hood to not only have kept my attention, but I did end up enjoying and watching a lot of the cutscenes because of the crazy dialogue that's found littered in the conversations. I also found myself enjoying the mostly girl cast early in the game because the script was just so amusing and appears geared towards a sarcastic sense of humor. But is this title good enough to mention in the same sentence as a Disgaea game? Let's find out in the review. There are 7 very distinct worlds to explore in this title, such as a red fire planet and a green tropical world. Each carries its own theme, and it reminded me a lot of venturing through some of my favorite Super Mario environments for the first time. The enemy variety is also one of the game's highlights, but the graphics in general are the title's weakest aspect. There's a slight haze that covers certain areas of the game, which gives it a bit of a dull look, and the regular enemy models are a bit bland. This haze effect is made 20 times worse in YouTube videos, especially because of how the videos are processed on here, so keep in mind the title actually does look a lot better than what you're watching in the HD video on here. However, the bosses I've come across and the special attack cutscenes and the animations keep things fresh enough to keep you enjoying the combat even with some of the blandness. The story anime cutscenes look as if they were pulled straight from a Disgaea title, which is a good thing because it looks great in both games. And even if you're not the least bit interested in the story itself, the artwork here is so well done, you're gonna want to check out the cutscenes. One final nitpick with the graphics is during combat, occasionally things can get a little sluggish, as there's sometimes a half-second delay or slow response when activating special attacks. The way this game stands out from the rest of the RPG pack and really shows its true qualities is going to be when you start grinding out your levels, as they've added enough extras to make this as fun as possible no matter where you are in the game level wise. You're always wondering what's going to pop up in the next battlefield, and to mix things up they added airship battles that are a lot more interesting than the rock paper scissors mechanic another reviewer described it as. Charming enemies effectively boost your airship in one way or another, so the more work you put into this part of the game, the stronger your airship will become. Also, the leveling of additional party members that aren't directly participating in battle is done by placing them in additional reserve spots, so leveling a large group of your allies has been streamlined, which effectively cuts down on the grinding time most games require you to spend to level party members that are outside of your immediate combat group. Other titles such as Disgaea also offer different ways of doing this as well, but on here it's a much faster process as your reserve members get quite a bit of experience points even when they're not in combat. This is especially useful when reincarnating or fusing your characters back to level 1 as you work towards building really strong mixtures of job classes. Mugen Souls does a great job of easing you into all the harder to understand mechanics, and the overall difficulty has a very nice balance and pacing to it. I never felt the game was too hard, and once I was 10 hours in, I was able to really start testing out everything that I had learned and relying on the abilities that I had set up for each party member. The tutorials were made as non-tedious as possible by incorporating some witty dialogue and a hands-on approach to learning the game's mechanics. So even doing the tutorials for the common sense stuff that I already knew didn't feel like a chore. While the game is very different than most role-playing titles and uses a lot of language that might be a bit hard to understand for some at first, it really was easy to pick up and play, and most gamers should feel comfortable after just a couple hours in. If you've spent any time playing a tactical RPG, you should feel right at home micromanaging your party and your inventory. Once you understand how the game works, it does a great job of rewarding you for winning difficult fights that you can challenge yourself with. And trust me when I say you can definitely make things too difficult for your party to handle on here. So overall, they did a great job of balancing the difficulty to please both new players that need more time to understand the mechanics and seasoned pros that are ready to just jump right in and test the limits of what they can handle. This type of game isn't meant to be played in a hurry, and it's certainly not based around quick reflexes and fast-paced combat. It revolves around micromanaging a group of characters and learning their strengths and weaknesses and creating that perfect party setup, including the random boss encounters, airship battles, and Disgaea-like randomized dungeons also help break the typical grinded-out mentality and adds yet another layer to an already great experience. Not everyone's going to appreciate the amount of work that was placed into this title, but for those that enjoy slower-paced tactical games such as the Disgaea series, you're going to find a lot to like about this game. Finally, I couldn't do a review for this title without mentioning the soundtrack. I gave some praise to this area of the game in another video, but this really enhanced the enjoyment of playing a good bit. It sounds very similar to what you would hear on a Disgaea soundtrack, but it's a little less wacky and a lot more upbeat with a nice variation of themes to match the areas that you're in. If you're having a bad day, this is the type of title that can turn that around and leave you in a good mood by the time you cut the power off. And sometimes that's the most rewarding experience you can walk away with when playing any game. It's definitely a title I would recommend to any fan of the JRPG genre. Anyways, this is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and thanks for stopping by.